Alright, video number 2 of concepts of Wing Chun. This is going to cover concepts 6 through 10. So, this first concept, number 6, small movements or economy of motion. Now, if you watched the first video, then you saw me make a reference when we hit concept number 4, maximum effect with minimum effort, and how I was going to link that to one of the concepts in this video. This is the one I'm linking it to. So when we talk about minimum effort and maximum effect, part of that minimum effort is the movements that we make. So we don't want to make anything big or extravagant or overextensive. So for example, if we're here, when we teach Wing Chun students, when beginners, we always do single hand trap at this level. So you see the separation between my hands. So one reason we do that is so that people can see it a little easier, because beginners don't have the sense of touch built up yet to where they could feel anything smaller. So when we give single hand trap, I'm going to line up on his center line in his chest, but I'm going to strike high so it's easier for him to see. So when he's learning how to use his pak sao or his tan sao or his bong sao, he can use his visual reference on that as opposed to solely feeling it. And that's also going to help him feel. But what we really want to look for when we're talking about small movements and economy of motion is not making things this big. So when he throws full cycle pak sao, it's going to be, the hands are separated here. Well, that's not what we want. We want to be short and small. If you notice how close the hands are together, it's going to be here. Okay? This also works for any other technique. If I'm using, for example, tanda, I've seen a lot of students, they'll start with their hands here, they'll throw a tanda this way, but then when they throw the tanda the other side, they'll pull their hands back and then go forward. We don't want to do that. We want to keep it on a line. For example, if he throws me a hook and I'm using tanda here, and then he throws me the other hook, if I pull my hands back, I get hit. So if I'm thinking about the small movement concept, and I've got tanda here, assuming this doesn't knock him out, and he throws that other hook, I want to make sure my movements are small enough to be able to not only cut off the second shot, but also get the angle I want for my counterattack. Concept number 7, Wing Chun is a triangle. So when we're looking at how we're going to use our structure, how we step, when we're on the dummy, things like that, Wing Chun is based on a triangle. If you understand anything about geometry, you understand the triangle is the most stable structure or the most stable shape that we know of. Mainly because if you have a triangle that's standing up, any pressure that comes down on the triangle is evenly distributed between both legs and into the base. So we're going to focus on our triangle structure here. So if I get Brandon to stand here, in our natural stance, again, every family is going to do this a little bit differently. Some stand with their toes pointed inward and pigeon toe. We stand with our feet parallel to one another with our toes facing forward. Either way, we're still focusing on the same triangle. So the first triangle I usually tell my students about is the vertical triangle. So each one of his legs is going to be a leg of the triangle. The baseline is obviously the line between his feet. And the apex of the triangle, which by the way is the top point, the apex of the triangle is going to be at dantian. So if you know where dantian is, you find your navel, 2 finger widths below your navel, and halfway in is dantian. So that's going to be the apex of that triangle. So any pressure that's pushed down on Brandon is going to be evenly distributed between both of his feet. And if we're trying to push him over, pushing this way is not going to work, because I'm pushing in to one of those legs. However, if I push toward the apex of a triangle, if I push this way, his hips buckle, and it's very easy to move. So we have to look at the stability of the triangle and the instability of the triangle. The next triangle I talk about is on the floor. There's actually 2. So the baseline between the feet, and then one leg coming out this way and one coming this way. So his apex would be here in front of him, and if there's one in front, there's obviously one behind. So if I'm pushing, say, center line, for example, if I'm pushing toward the apex of his rear triangle, he's very easy to move. If I pull towards his front apex, he's very easy to move this way. This will come back in a small reference to the last concept in this video a little bit later, but we'll show that shortly. And lastly, but not least, stand facing me, please. So if he has his guard up, what we're looking at here, this elbow position, we're going to see this triangle here, all right? So we want to focus on having this base because this is going to give our structure stability. If his hand is here and there's no base here, then there's no intention in the elbow. So I want the intention to be both in the hand and in the elbow, so that if I try to push him forward, it's very difficult to get that elbow to collapse. If I try to pull him, it's a little harder to get that elbow to come out. If his arm is straight, then pushing and pulling is really no big deal. All right? So when he puts his intention on the elbow, his structure is much more stable. Number 8, natural stance has an advantage over left lead foot or right lead foot. As I said in the previous concept, the way we use our natural stance, we have our feet parallel to one another, pointing the same direction, as opposed to being pigeon-toed. And so when we're looking at the natural stance, if I have my left foot forward or my right foot forward, I'm potentially giving up part of my body. I'm giving up the left part of my body if my left foot's forward, and the right part of my body if my right foot's forward. So if Brandon's standing in front of me, say in a kickboxing stance, he's giving up his left side more quickly than he's giving up his right side. So if I'm standing in natural stance, he has to choose. Let's say he tries to take me down. If he's a wrestler, if he is an MMA fighter and he wants to go to the ground, he has to choose a leg. So choosing a side to go down to catch my leg is going to make him telegraph. However, if I've got one foot forward, he simply has to drop down enough to get this leg. So that's one way natural stance has an advantage over the left or right lead foot. Another way is that I can move in any direction I choose to move with little to no telegraphing, depending on what the situation is. If I have my right foot forward and I want to move to my left, for example, my base foot, my left foot is going to move first, which means my weight is going to have to come forward a little bit to loosen up my rear leg to let me step, and then I can put my weight back. If he has better timing than I do, and he sees my head come forward, it's going to be easy to cut me off or throw the strike. However, if I'm in natural stance and I want to move to my left, I simply, with my weight being 50-50 distribution, I simply push off my right foot and I'm able to move that direction very quickly with little to no telegraphing. Concept number 9, Fa-Jin, or violent waist whipping energy. When we talk about Fa-Jin, in my school, I usually refer to this as oscillation in the beginning to have students understand what the movement of the body is supposed to be. Earlier we talked about dantian, and we were talking about triangles and how the apex of that triangle hits dantian. When we talk about dantian, for those of you who don't know, let me break it down a little bit. Dantian is called the seat of physical power. So the way I like to relay this to my students is like a tornado. When a tornado occurs, everything is in chaos except for one spot, is in the eye. The eye of the tornado is the calmest place around that tornado, while everything else is cycling around it. Dantian is essentially the core or the eye of our body. So as we oscillate, everything going around the eye is and can be in chaos, but the eye is going to be very calm. So the seat of physical power, everything you do physically comes from here. Then we talk about another source of energy we call Sun Quan, or the third eye, is here. This is where it's called the source of speed or the source of intention. So where my physical power basically stops, my seat of speed or intention picks up the slack and continues. What we want to do is connect these two to create Fa-Jin. So this waist whipping energy that I'm creating is is not going to do anything unless I have a goal in mind of where I should go or what I should do with it. This is where we get intention. So as I'm doing this, as I'm oscillating my body is creating energy, and I'm using my intention to go either towards a target or through my target, ideally, and then my Fajin is there. So as I create this energy and I throw my punch or whatever strike I tend to throw, my energy is easily converted from here going up and out my hand. This is Fajin. Concept number 10, this is rooting. So when we talk about rooting, we're talking about using the earth as a lever. This is also called heavy chi. So when you're thinking about rooting, what you want to think about is you want to visualize, once you're in your natural stance, you want to visualize sinking your upper body and rooting into the floor as if you're a tree sprouting roots into the soil. So you're going to anchor yourself to the floor. Now how we utilize this in Wing Chun is once we're square to one another, anything that I'm going to do from here, I don't want to attack and stand straight up. Or if he attacks me, I don't want to stand up as I'm defending and tense up my body. So I want to keep my root. If you're in a Wing Chun school now, you're going to hear this quite a bit. You want to keep your root, keep your structure. So as we're doing this, so we're going to focus on staying rooted into the floor. Now there is such a thing as a single root, and there's also a double root. So that sounds just like what it is. Single root is 1 foot, double root is both feet. So when we're in a natural stance, the weight is evenly distributed across both legs into both feet, as I said earlier when we talked about Wing Chun being a triangle. So to show you a little bit about how this works, if I'm standing straight up and Brandon pushes me, it's very easy to push me over, okay? But if I take my root and I visualize putting myself into the floor and rooting in, let's say I give him an arm, okay? So again, I'm standing straight up, he puts both hands on my arm, I resist forward, he pushes forward, and I go pretty easily. So now I root, give him this hand, he pushes, not so much, okay? He's pushing. Now, part of what I'm doing is yielding, all right? If I resist forward and he's pushing forward, you've got two opposing forces coming in. So what I'm doing is a little bit of a yield, but I'm rooting down, I'm sinking my upper body. Notice how his arm level changes. If I'm standing straight up, his arms are parallel with the floor. Once I root, he's pushing down. So what I want to make sure is have good structure with my elbow, good intention here, and good rooting into the floor. So once he pushes, it's very difficult for him to push me over. Okay? So when we talk about rooting, this is what we're talking about. Thanks for watching again, and concepts 11 through 15 and 16 through 20 will be coming as soon as we can get them out. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.